Hello everyone, my name is Sarah Thomas, and today's Leap Right In video will be about how to advance your sentence structures and variation. We will first discuss different sentence structures, then how to vary your sentences, and we will end with general English writing tips. So to begin talking about sentence structures, we will first start talking about clauses. There are two types of clauses, an independent clause or a dependent clause. An independent clause is one complete thought. I walk to class. A dependent clause, however, is an incomplete thought. While I walk to class, this is missing information. While I walk to class, what? If you take a look at the two examples, there is one word that changes the meaning, while. While is an example of a conjunction, specifically a subordinating conjunction. So now we know a dependent clause is an incomplete thought that starts with a subordinating conjunction. There are many types of subordinating conjunctions. Please look at the bottom of the slide to see some common subordinating conjunctions. Now we can use these clauses to make different types of sentences. As a reminder, a sentence is a subject with a verb. For example, she ran is a sentence. Our first type of sentence is simple. This is just one independent clause. So, I walk to class is an example of a simple sentence. The next type of sentence is a compound sentence. This is when you have two independent clauses together. I walk to class. My sister drives to work. We need something to connect these two clauses. For example, we can say and. And is an example of a coordinating conjunction. There are 8 coordinating conjunctions. And to help you remember, you can think fanboys. For a compound sentence, it doesn't matter the order, so you can start with my sister drives to work and I walk to class. The next sentence is a complex sentence. This is when you have an independent clause with a dependent clause. So here we have I see monkeys, I walk to class. Because we have a dependent clause, we need a subordinating conjunction, like while. So now, our complex sentence is I see monkeys while I walk to class. You can also start with while I walk to class. But please note, if you start with a dependent clause, you need a comma. Whereas if you start with an independent clause, you do not need a comma. Our final type of sentence is a compound complex sentence. So you can have an independent clause, and a dependent clause. For example, my sister drives to work, and I see monkeys while I walk to class. If you would like to practice with these different types of sentences, please pause the video here. Pick an image or a topic. Then write a simple sentence about it. After, see if you can write more sentences, compound, complex, or compound, complex ones. This slide has some example sentences that you can read about dogs. Now, I would like you to pause the video and read the two writing samples. I want you to decide which is the stronger writing, A or B. In this case, A is the stronger writing. B is an example of what we call a run-on sentence. This is because all of this information has no punctuation until our last period here. If we take a look at A, we can see a lot of punctuation with commas, exclamation points, and periods. We also have transition words like although and furthermore. So even though they both have the same information, A is easier to read and understand. Now we will move on to sentence variation. Pause and read and decide which piece of writing is stronger. The correct answer here is B, and this is because A has too many I's. I am, I wrote, and I think, which is just too repetitive for more advanced writing. So how can you stop using I so much? Idea 1 is to change your subject. So instead of saying, I wrote this letter, you can first say the English department's free language learning resources. This is an example of making the object now the subject. You can also say the reason I am writing this letter. This is an example of making your subject more clear. And our last example is my classmates and I. This is an example of how to add to your subject. You can also start with transition words, like first of all, for example, however, and therefore. Here is a list of transition phrases and words that you can use in your writing. Now, if you would like to practice, please pause and see if you can rewrite this to be more advanced. Here is an example of how to revise the writing. We have the object starting, we have transition words, and we have included more advanced sentence structures. Here's another 2 samples. Please pause and see if you can figure out which is the stronger writing, A or B. Overall, both of these are very strong writing. However, B is very repetitive in the fact that it always starts with a subject and verb. I benefited. They helped. These resources were. So how can we make our writing more like sample A? One way to do this is to start with a verb and ing. We can say, using these resources, or advertising these resources, or finally, asking the professors, are all great examples of how to begin your sentence with a verb and ing. Another idea is to start with a preposition. Instead of saying, I have benefited, we can say, by using these resources, and then your subject, my oral skills. Another example is, in the process, and then your subject, I. Our last example is, on average, subject, I. So here are some ways that you can include prepositions to change your sentences. Here's another opportunity to practice. Please pause and rewrite the passage. See if you can start with a verb, an ing, or a preposition. Here is an example of a revision. On Tuesdays is a preposition, and offering is an example of a verb with an ing. Lastly, we'll talk about some general English writing tips. Please pause and decide if you think A or B is the stronger piece of writing. Here, B is the stronger piece of writing. A is very unclear and includes a lot of irrelevant or unneeded information. It talks about different animals, the ocean and the land. It talks about zoos. It talks about lions. It's not until the second half of the last sentence that we see, oh, this person is talking about elephants. If we look at B, however, it's very clear that they're talking about elephants. And all the information they have is related to why elephants are their favorite animal. So this is a lot more clear, and it directly answers the prompt. And here is our last 2 samples. Please pause and read and decide which is the stronger piece of writing. Here, A is the stronger piece of writing. It's a lot more concise and to the point, and coherent, which means it's easy to understand. The second one has too many words, and it's very indirect. So if someone said this to me, it's harder to understand what they want. Where in sample A, it's easy to understand that they want to watch a movie with me Saturday. So in summary, make sure you use a variety of sentence structures. Not all simple, but not all compound complex. We want to use all of these in our writing. To add more variety, move away from always starting with I. You can do this by changing your subject or by starting with a transition word. Also, move away from always starting with a subject and a verb. You can start with a verb, an ing, or with a preposition. And lastly, make sure your writing is concise, direct, clear, and relevant. Thanks everyone for listening, and that is it for this video. If you would like to see more resources, please feel free to check out the English Writing Lab website or our Instagram. You can also watch one of our other videos that cover different topics about English speaking and English writing.